All right, guys, we are going to graph this rational function. Um, yeah, remember, you're always going to be allowed to use your calculator to double check to make sure that you've done it correctly, but there are things that you need to do to show us that you know what you're doing. Okay, the very first thing that I'm going to do is actually take. So sorry. I am going to take my numerator and my denominator. I'm actually going to factor them. The numerator is I'm going to factor 2 out, and I'll have x squared minus 4x plus a 3, which of course that would also be 2 times the quantity x minus 1 times x minus 3. And then my denominator, I'm going to factor out an x, so I get an x minus 1. And so then if you look, when you do this, you've got x times x minus 1. Guys, you've got the x minus 1s canceling, so you will actually have a hole in your graph at x equals 1. And remember, the hole in a graph will supersede everything else. So, everything else that we would have had there on the graph is not going to be there. Okay, so let's start with zeros of our graph. Zeros of our graph. Remember, you take the numerator, set it equal to 0. Well, the problem is this numerator right here. First of all, you ignore the 2. Don't set 2 equal to 0 and tell me that there's a... No. Nope, nope, nope. You do not set 2 equal to 0 and tell me that there's a 0 at 2. You can set x minus 1 equal to 0, equal to 0, and you can set x plus 3 equal to 0. Well, again, remember that there's a hole there at x equals 1, so you actually have just 1 0 at x equals negative 3. Oops, I don't know why I have like extra negative signs there. Okay, then you can do vertical asymptotes. Vertical asymptotes, you take your denominator and set it equal to 0. Okay, you take your denominator and set it equal to 0. Again, you do have 2 items in your denominator to start with, but then again, one of them shouldn't really exist. You got an x equals a 0, and then you would have an x equals a 1 there, but remember, there is a hole in your graph at x equals 1. You would have, let's see what else do we need? Vertical asymptotes, we need zeros, we need to know if there were any holes, we need to know, we need horizontal asymptotes. Horizontal asymptotes, your degree is a squared over a squared. I'm going to go undo that so you can see it again, but up here you got x squared over x squared. So when you do this, your horizontal asymptote, okay, would be y equals, you take the leading coefficients. When your degree is the same, meaning your exponents are the same, you take the leading coefficients. So it would be a 2 over 1. So you have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 2. That's pretty much all you kind of need to give us so that we know what we've got. We've got vertical asymptotes, we've got zeros, we've got horizontal asymptotes. If you have a horizontal asymptote, you do not have a slant asymptote, so you don't have to go and do anything with that. So then you go and you put all the little bits and pieces on here. At y equals 2, you're going to do a dotted line, a dashed line, sorry. Okay. That's your horizontal asymptote. You have a 0 at negative 3. I'm just going back through my problem here. So you are crossing the x-axis at x equals negative 3. You're going to have a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. So you need to, you actually need to be on that x equals 0. So there's your vertical asymptote. And then you do have a hole at x equals 1. Now remember, this is the hole at x equals 1 you don't actually graph until, oh, goofball. Oh, you big dork. I'm like, wait a minute. Your zeros. I screwed up over here. This right here is actually a minus up here in the upper right hand corner is where I'm at. It's a minus 3. So this is x minus 3, so x equals positive 3. I was looking at my calculator, and that's the thing. I did all that work, and I can look at my calculator to double check to make sure that it's actually done correctly. And in that case, it wasn't. It should not be at negative 3. It should be at positive 3 because I messed up my sign, which I would have noticed as soon as I got 1, 2, 3. As soon as I went to my calculator to double check. Because again, you've got to put your your bits of information on there, but you always go and you always just enter this whole thing as it is carefully into the calculator in y equals, and then hit zoom 6, and it'll show up with your entire graph. So from the calculator, now that I have everything where it needs to be and I fixed my sign for that, you've got part of your graph up here in the second quadrant, and then you do have part of your graph down here, okay, and I'm doing something on purpose. So I drew the graph as it was, but then I have to go back in and I have to put the whole in at x equals 1. So I find my 1 here, right? That's it's tough for me to do this when it's on the iPad, guys, so just bear with me. So then you basically have a hole at x equals 1. I mean, that's the best you can do for an iPad, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to say.